Good evening, my relaxation seekers. It is I, Whispering Batman in the flesh. I'm probably exactly what you thought a guy doing Xbox and movie collections would look like. I'm a fat guy. Just figured I'd go ahead and do some FaceTime. Eventually I'd have to come out from behind the camera anyway, so I just saw Paranormal Activity 4, and I know I shouldn't have. I know I shouldn't have bought it, but I did. I rented it, and it's horrible. It's not scary, just like number 3, maybe even number 2. Probably looking back on it, number 1 probably wasn't that scary either. There's something I get kind of like a kick out of those kind of movies. Not bad movies, but I like a good scare if it can get it done right. Generally, horror movies aren't very. I don't really jive well with horror movies, is what I'm trying to say. So I was watching it, and as soon as it ended, I'm thinking, that's not a cliffhanger ending. That's just a really bad ending. So I figured I would get on here right away and talk about some of my favorite superhero movies again, just to kind of wash out the bad taste. So here we go again, part 2? Yeah, part 2. No, part 3. Part 3 of my favorite superhero movies. Now, some of these, they're not, actually most of them aren't going to be newer movies. These will be movies that I sort of grew up with. So it's not going to be anything really new. It's just going to be maybe ones you haven't heard of before, or maybe if you have heard of them, then let me know. I love these movies, so I'd like to talk about them. First up, I always thought for the longest time that Terminator was the best, that nothing could beat it. And the way I look at it, the first Terminator movie is kind of like a slasher horror movie, sort of. Because, you just get this couple who's running away from this bad guy who's virtually just chasing them really, really slowly. Like, there's like one part where Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, they're in that computer factory, and they're running away from the robot, and there's one shot where they show them, and they're running down a hallway, and they're quite a ways away from this robot, the Terminator, which is going really, really slow, but somehow, like, in the next shot, it's like the Terminator warped like 14 feet, and all of a sudden it's just like right behind them. So like the first movie, it's a classic, definitely, but not one of my favorite movies. The second one, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, very, very good movie. Classic. Awesome, awesome movie with visual effects from 22 years ago that still hold up today. So I kind of always grew up with the knowledge of these awesome Terminator movies. And when I was 12 years old, I was watching TV, and it was before Spike TV. It used to be TNN, and they were in the middle of like changing their whole image for men, and they would show RoboCop like all the time, and all of its sequels. And I remember checking it out because I was like, I've never seen RoboCop before. I never really heard anything about RoboCop, so I'm going to give it a watch. And I watched it. One, I watched it on TV. And two, at the time, with, a 12-year-old mentality and already going in thinking that nothing can beat the Terminator, I didn't like the movie at all. I thought this movie's so tacky. It's look at, he's so cool now. Look at him. How could I have ever hated you? You're perfect. I just thought it was just really, really goofy. I didn't understand the humor. A couple years ago, I picked up RoboCop, and I watched it again, and I was blown away. What a great movie. Awesome story. Really, really cool. I mean, you get a perfect arc for the main character. You get a very, very satisfying conclusion. So I had to pick up this 20th anniversary DVD. It's in a very fitting steel case, steelbook. I wish all my DVDs and video games and everything were in steelbook, because these are just so cool. Peter Weller, amazing, amazing actor. RoboCop, 50% robot, 50% cop. Actually, no, that's not even the tagline. The official tagline for RoboCop is part man, part machine, all cop. What a badass. I think my favorite scene in this whole movie, though, is right at the very end of the movie. See, it's kind of hard to get into it without either spoiling it or just kind of explaining the whole story, but if you've seen the movie, my favorite scene is right at the very end when the guy asks RoboCop what his name is, and he turns around and he kind of gives a very natural smile because he's gotten his humanity back, and he says, Murphy. I love it. Perfect ending. If only they had just stopped right there and didn't make RoboCop 2 or RoboCop 3 or the TV shows or the cartoon. Highly, highly recommend this movie. If you've never seen it, very good movie. Don't let its reputation from the second one or anything else that was made after this one. And I know that they remade it, and I don't know. I enjoyed Dredd very, very much. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it a little bit more. I've seen it maybe like 3 times now. So maybe there's still hope. If I come off as being quite kind of sleepy in this video, it's because I just got done watching that Paranormal Activity 4, and it's like 4 in the morning, ironically. And I haven't gotten my beauty sleep in like 3 days. I need my beauty sleep. Here's another amazing movie. I guarantee that most of you haven't seen this movie, but you've probably heard the music that was done by Queen. That's the dun 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 Flash. Ah. I love Queen, by the way. Amazing rock band. If you've never seen Flash Gordon, there's no better way to say this, but please watch it. It's so full of cheese. It's just, the cheese is just cascading off of this thing. I can smell it from here. It's basically Star Wars on acid. Pretty much what it is. Phenomenal soundtrack. Really, really cool visuals. Watercolors used for planets and models. Real things. Nothing synthetic. Except for the acting. It even came in this really cool, it's kind of like a thick cardboard case, and it opens up. It's so special, it opens up kind of like the doors of a DeLorean. Now, Could you imagine if RoboCop drove a DeLorean? Why he didn't is completely beyond me. He drove a Taurus, by the way. That's a good car, too. Dependable. Last summer, the movie Ted, they made a lot of references. They made a lot of references to this movie, and I guarantee you, if you watch this movie, Ted will be 80 times funnier. When I saw Ted in theaters, I saw that they were making a reference like right away at the very beginning, and I thought, "Oh, that's so cool! I know what that one is." But then later on in the movie, a big portion of the movie is actually tied in with this movie. So if you've never seen Flash Gordon, it wouldn't be as funny. It almost feels like Ted was tailored to people who saw Flash Gordon. But don't feel left out, because this is a fun movie to watch and to own. Very, very campy. You'll have a lot of fun watching it. Just a total cheese fest. And Timothy Dalton. Come on. Timothy Dalton, man. My copy even came with a little insert, a little piece of artwork. I should put that on my fridge, because I visit my fridge like 80 times a day. I would love to look at that 80 times a day. Yeah, Flash Gordon. Favorite moment from Flash Gordon? The whole movie. The whole movie is just a moment. And you gotta be in the moment to enjoy Flash Gordon. So, don't look away. It's not a train wreck where you just can't look away, but it's just a movie where you're going, I really can't look away. There's always something going on. Something completely ridiculous. A lot of these movies that I'm showing are very cheesy. Even RoboCop it's got its cheese. It's good cheese. Not sure if a lot of people have heard about this one, but a lot of people who I have spoken to who have seen it enjoy this movie quite a bit. It's never really thought of Alec Baldwin as a superhero, but this movie's, I think it was marketed as like a big superhero action movie, and it's got its action, and it's got some really, really, really cool visual effects, but this movie is just a lot of fun. It's got some good humor, comedy, this movie's kind of in a world of its own, but it's so much fun, a lot of fun to watch. The Shadow Knows. The Shadow, if you don't really know that much about The Shadow, it's a lot like Batman, actually. It's the character created about 80 years ago, 70 years ago. Was originally a radio show. I don't know too much about the original Shadow, but he's got comic books and a movie. I actually heard that Sam Raimi, the director of the first 3 Spider-Man movies, was considering making a Shadow movie, and even this one's very, very good. One of my favorite movies. But I can see Sam Raimi making a very, very good Shadow movie. I think he'd do a very good job. This movie, and this kind of works as my favorite scene from the movie, but in the movie, I don't know if you can see it, but he's holding a knife, and that knife comes alive and just screams. It's just got like this tiny, tiny mouth and these wicked eyes, and it comes alive, and it's even got like hands and like legs. It can stand up and walk around, and it can fly. It's campy. It's so good though. When the shadow does appear, he's very intimidating. This, like I said, this movie's it's kind of campy and it's got its cheese, but the shadow is badass. Very, very cool. They even had some really cool toys that came out at the time. I think it's from 1994. And the toys were cheap, but they were really, really cool. Because he just looked like such a badass. So, probably my favorite Alec Baldwin movie, too. I'm not a big Alec Baldwin fan, but I enjoy him quite a bit in this movie. All the actors are having a lot of fun in this movie. Very, very cool. A kind of neat way to look at it is it's an underrated superhero movie. It's kind of like the True Lies of superhero movies. It's kind of under the radar and everyone's kind of forgotten about it, but when you do talk about it, people go, oh, that's right, no, I saw The Shadow, it was a good movie. Unless you hate it, then I'm sorry, I really, really enjoy this movie. And last for tonight is a superhero, and he is quite super. Very much so resembles Batman. Actually, Batman takes a lot of cues from this guy. Zorro. I love this movie. Antonio Banderas is perfectly cast in this movie. Anthony Hopkins is perfectly cast in this movie. Catherine Zeta-Jones is hot, but in a respectful sort of way. I remember being 9 years old and watching this movie and thought it was so cool. And I'm 23 now, and it's still really cool. There's actually a moment in this movie where Antonio Banderas is kind of really rugged, very rugged, and he needs to get a haircut. So he's in like this bat cave. Good sound effects of like the hair scraping and cutting, and it's almost like an ASMR kind of video. And I think I even experienced it back then because it's like it's just a very it's very good. It's not my favorite scene though. For a favorite scene in that movie is when Antonio Banderas is actually Zorro for the first time. Not that moment when he goes out on his own and puts on his own mask, but it's when he finally gets the Zorro mask and he raids that base and he gets into all those sword fights. It's so cool. It's not over the top, but it's just fantastical enough to be super and awesome. And there's no gore. It's sword fighting, but it's not like Lord of the Rings where it's you can tell people are getting hit, but it's very much implied. But this one actually has more fun to it. He's kicking guys in the ass and he's flipping over them and just being really, really, really cool. There's a lot of theatricality to this guy, which I like a lot. There's a lot of fun being Zorro, which I think a lot of superheroes could take a cue from this guy. Is that he's doing it because this is what he wants to do, and he has fun while he does it. like I said, Zorro's a lot like Batman. Um, when he is summoned by the townspeople, they ring a bell. It's just like how Batman, when they need his help, they turn on the bat signal. Instead of the Batmobile, he has a wicked, wicked awesome horse named Tornado. Very, very cool. If you're a big fan of Batman, I highly recommend The Mask of Zorro. And if you're looking for just a little bit more Zorro after you're done watching this movie, then you can watch the second one, but only if you just have to. It's not as good as this guy right here. It's a pretty tough act to follow, though. Before I go, kind of have to go back to my first video where I talked about X-Men 2. I didn't mention my favorite scene from that movie. And after watching it again recently, I think I'd have to say that my favorite scene in X-Men 2 overall, this is going to sound really silly, it's just the part where Wolverine's in that house and he smells something. So his reflex is he whips out his claws, and it turns out that there's just a kitty cat there, and he just starts licking on his claws. I don't know, I guess I'm tired. I'm gonna go sleep off Paranormal Activity 4, because I'm definitely not so scared where I'm wide awake, but so awake that I need to talk about and rid myself of what I just watched. So, yeah. Okay.